Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the cEDH cast. My name is Ian, and with me as always is my co-host Braden.
Hey y'all.
On this week's episode, we have an interview with a very special community guest that we have been hinting at for quite some time. But before we get to that wonderful surprise, let's go over to our patron shout out. Braden, take us away.
All right, so our patron of the week is Justin Domingue. Justin is a competitor patron. Thank you for being a competitor patron. We appreciate all of our patrons. It's helped us get a lot of the really cool stuff we have. We've been able to add a video to our podcasts for site reviews recently, which has been really exciting. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from that. So thanks.
Yeah, it's been really awesome having the community just help us out in such an amazing way. Times are obviously a little crazy right now, but the support that we've seen from the community has been really awesome. And for those who are here week after week, we appreciate you so much. And even if you're not in a position to help right now, doing the free stuff like joining the Discord, being part of the community, hitting the subscribe button on YouTube, all of that stuff really, really helps. We also, if you make purchases, we now have a TCG Player affiliate link, which we will put in the show notes for this episode. So please, if you're purchasing from TCG Player, it doesn't cost anything. Just click on that link and purchase through that. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, moving on to our main topic, we have an amazing special guest.
Oh, here we go.
Kyle Hill.
Hello, boys. How are you?
Good.
We're great, and we're really happy to have you
Yeah,
here.
it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. What the listeners don't know is that this is now the second time we've been talking to each other because we weren't all synced up on how to record audio. So what I'm going to preface this whole interview by saying this is going to be one of the cleanest, sharpest podcasts you've ever, because we've had a whole hour and a half worth of practice. So you just wait. The insights we're gonna have, the cards I'm gonna shit on. Oh, it's gonna be amazing.
It's all rehearsed.
I don't like you setting expectations so high, Kyle. It's I'm a little scared now.
Hey, you gotta make a challenge and rise to it.
Let's move on to the main topic. Kyle, let's start from the very beginning. How did you first hear about the competitive side of the EDH format?
Well, hello, as the boy said, my name is Kyle Hill. I'm a science educator and communicator, but my first love as a hobby is definitely Magic the Gathering. You may have seen me on Command Zone or talking about Magic in various places or working with wizards. It comes from a place of love. I've been playing for about 20 years plus, and even though I don't really make content around Magic, it's all science and education. If you want to check it out, that's just Kyle Hill on YouTube, but it's something that I spend a lot of time and money on and thinking about. So yeah, I started playing about 20 years ago, and I remember my first deck was a pre-constructed deck, 60 card with Mirozel, a card, flyer. Actually, I have it right here this time. It's a 2/3 flyer
Nice.
for 4, and it says return it to its owner's hand if it's a target of a spell or ability. So not great for 4 mana, yeah. But I remember that, so that was about 20 years ago. And then there was, like a lot of us, I think, there was kind of a lull in my Magic playing until college-ish. And around 2011, that's when my friend introduced me to Commander, and that's when Commander, I think, was first officially supported by Wizards. And just in playing with a couple of people, I got into EDH, and it's now the format I play exclusively. I have 15 to 18 decks at any one moment. I love the format. It's I think it's the best way to play this game.
Well, speaking of your content, you did do a couple videos related to Magic, didn't you?
Yeah,
or at least one.
Well, whenever, I mean, especially with Because Science, when I was there, I feel like videos are really, well, at least my videos, I think, are the best when I'm really passionate about something, and I've been trying for a long time to kind of weave Magic into it. So, I explored a scientific paper that made Magic the Gathering into a Turing machine and followed up on that, and I kind of want to do some hypergeometry stuff with Ultra Pro, and we'll see what happens. But how
cool.
I got into cEDH specifically, I remember it well. I pulled a Selvala Heart of the Wilds from Conspiracy 2, and it was just sitting in my box for the longest time, just this cool looking mythic, and I looked up the price. I don't remember why. It's like $50. Why the hell is it that? Why? So I built the deck. I think I net decked on EDH Rec a little bit. It's like, oh wow, big dumb fun stuff. This seems fun. And then another content creator, well, two of them, I was listening to DJ on the Command Zone podcast when he was filling in for Jimmy, and he went through his own Selvala deck tech, and when he was talking about that, he mentioned a number of cards where he's like, look, I don't play this, that, or the other card because it's more combo focused, and, I'm building a less powerful version, and I just happen to have some of those powerful cards in my deck already. I was like, okay, well, what is this getting at? I stumbled into the cEDH deck list database. I found Brostorm, and I had a lot of the cards. And because I'm a very cheap and frugal man, and Selvala I think is the cheapest deck to build, I went for it. And once I started playing with it, I absolutely fell in love with it. It is, Selvala specifically is so fast, and it's so explosive in a way that you might not expect, where if someone hasn't played against that deck before, it will, like blow you out of the water from nowhere.
The first time someone underestimates Selvala is the first time they lose to it. Because I always know I feel like it's one of those decks where either A, it does nothing, and you're like, why is this deck even at the table with us? Or B, you just get your teeth kicked in. You're like, who let him untap?
Yeah, no, that's what I like about it is that, and I think this applies to all cEDH decks really, but for her specifically, it does feel like if my opening hand is fine and you don't stop me, I will win. I think that's, again, I think that's all competitive decks, but untapping with Selvala, everybody, especially my play group, asks, like, if it goes to my turn with open mana and she's still alive, people are like, oh, right. Okay, do you win this turn?
Yeah.
Which I like. And so I'm kind of known, I guess, a little bit around the community thanks to the Command Zone boys for building powerful decks. I like to play to win. I like to be very optimized. My education is in engineering, and I talk about science all day for a living. So I like when things are fit together really well and are built really well and interact. And I don't like stuff. My brain doesn't work well with stuff that's not there for a reason. Like you'll see someone play some card and you're like, if I can't think of the reason why that's in there, it annoys me, So I just tend towards high power stuff, and Selvala was my entry point.
It's very interesting because a lot of that cEDH mentality definitely exists where you're like, no, I'm thinking efficiently. That's how you do it.
Yeah, and I made this point when I talked about it publicly a little bit, but to me, some of the best times I have playing Magic aren't just sitting around with friends, and you're not always sitting around with friends. I like solving the puzzle that is a competitive situation where you have X variables and you have Y things to do. How do you get to Z win con or whatever, and how can you do that as quickly and as mind gamey as possible,
Exactly.
It just affords a lot of extra opportunities to do the stuff in Magic you don't usually get to, and Magic makes you feel smart when you're playing it really well. And I like feeling smart. So when you think of a really cool interaction or you do something really cool, like I know specifically, in my mind, like when I used Vines of Vastwood on an opponent's Godo so they couldn't equip their own Helm of the Host.
Yeah.
Usually sweet. Only use that to protect Selvala, but using it in Godo, when I did it, we both kind of looked at each other and like, oh, that works, doesn't it? Like that was really fun. So the high interactivity is very appealing to me.
It's like the first time I remember I was playing with somebody when Dockside first came out, and they were like, yeah, I had this blink of an eye for just to answer any permanent, but I realized I could blink my own Dockside.
I felt that way with when people mentioned Temur Sabertooth with it too. I was like,
yeah.
Is Temur Sabertooth the best uncommon creature in competitive?
That's tough.
I don't know. I think
that's like a thing I'm gonna spend 3 hours on Scryfall later looking at.
That's probably impossible to answer. I think if you go generally, I've always considered Temur to be like probably the most underrated and underplayed cards, where I feel like I play it whenever I can, and I feel like I don't see it ever. And in casual tables, I never see it, and I don't get why.
Oh yeah, I mean, people have been talking about that card for years in casual tables, and it's like, but where are the actual copies of it?
And when I go on, like, I don't know what tangent I'm getting off on here, but when I go on like EDH rec and I see, I also have a Yarok list, high power, not competitive, not like Allure and Alarm. Although I am going to buy those cards.
Right.
When I go on EDH Rec and I see like Temur Sabertooth and Cloud of Fairies both in like less than 20% of Yarok decks, I'm like, what are you doing then? like that's it's
it's funny. A lot of people see EDH Rec as a strictly casual site, but like for the same reason that I still listen to the Command Zone and like a number of casual podcasts, like sometimes people figure out stuff that you haven't. So like I am known as a brewer in the cEDH community, and I brew some wacky decks, And a lot of the times after I'm done looking at like Reddit and like cEDH sources and the Discords, I'll go over to EDH Rec and be like, all right, but what are people playing on the casual side? And I've found some cards that no one would ever have objectively been like, yes, this is a card that is competitive. But you know what? In like that specific deck, it's pretty okay.
Yeah, it's a good feeling.
One thing I like to use EDH Rec for is I was talking to Spleenface about like what archetypes are more popular, and so on EDH Rec you can look like how many times does this card show up with this card, and so we were trying to figure out what the most popular like Thrasios and Tymna archetype was, and it was interesting to have conversations like, is Neoform a unique enough card to say like this is this archetype or this is that archetype? And we're like, no. And they're like, what about Eldritch Evolution? So we started looking through like the list that had Eldritch Evolution in it. So if you're interested in like those kinds of problems and questions, EDH Rec also has like some really valuable resources.
One thing to note, actually, this is a fun thing for if you are trying to find other people who have attempted to build competitive versions of decks that aren't hypothetically like on the database, is there is an advanced filter section on EDH Rec. So if you tend to notice like there's obviously a lot of staples in our format. So hypothetically speaking, I'm looking at, for example, I did a deep dive on Winota earlier this week. It's a long story. But, I looked at that list and I said, okay, let's filter it down. I want lists that are playing Plateau. I want lists that are playing probably Blood Moon. I want lists that are playing Mana Crypt and Mox Diamond, right? These are all like sort of if someone wasn't trying to build this as competitively as possible, they wouldn't be playing this.
There's even a simpler option I've found that when you're just trying to get the lay of the land, I just filter by expensive. And it takes the top 10% most expensive decks that are listed, and that's usually the difference between a $2,000 deck and a $200 deck is big enough that it's going to capture all of those more competitive cards, I think.
So what decks do you have currently in paper for cEDH?
Yeah, right now I actually only have two. I forgot to preface all of this at the beginning saying, like, I'm definitely new to cEDH. I'm a pretty big noob. I've been playing Magic for a long time, but in terms of actually getting involved in the community and looking at lists and all that stuff and brewing myself, I consider myself a busy man. So usually I'm looking at Discord and net decking and kind of just I'm fine with other people doing a lot of the work, and I just want to play something powerful and something cool. So. And also being frugal. But I did also recently build Najeela Tempo, and going back to the frugalness of it, I can't. It's hard for me to understand how people have a lot of cEDH decks because. On a previous recording of this here podcast, we went through, because I was curious, and I took the dimensions, the length, width, and the thickness of a Magic card. I multiplied it by 100, assuming it doesn't have sleeves, and you multiply that by the density of paper, and you can get a value of that, how much mass it has, and if the average cEDH deck or whatever is $2,000 to $10,000, then a cEDH deck in the deck box is worth its weight in gold by hundreds and hundreds of times.
I believe it was, you said Najeela was worth 800 times
853 times its weight in gold.
Yeah,
there it is. That's kind of insane. Now, if your entire deck box was filled with gold, then we're talking about like $175,000. So that analogy doesn't really work anymore. But a cEDH deck is worth its own weight in gold many, many, many times over. So that being said, I don't look to build a lot of them, but I wanted something because Selvala is known to be lower in the tier list. I wanted something that if I was going to play competitive, I could sit down with it and I knew I could compete with anything. So I have Najeela and Selvala. Yeah, and I gravitate, for whatever reason, I gravitate in competitive and casual just to decks with ladies as commanders that you don't want to untap with if you're an opponent. So Selvala, Najeela, Brea, Narset, Captain Sisse, like all Joyra, very, very threatening ladies. That's what I'm all about. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a thing with me.
We'll get a psychologist on for our next episode and talk about that.
Maybe that says something more about me than anything else. I don't know.
Maybe it says something about WotC. Maybe they just like printing threatening ladies,
Hey, power to them. I like that.
Have you ever heard of the old like Paradox Sisse lists? Did you ever hear about that before it got banned?
Yeah, no, I never had that list. I did have a Sisse deck when Paradox Engine was legal. But I didn't do that because I had Paradox and something else.
I understand.
But that reminds me, remember last time we talked about, that's how I actually got my playgroup into cEDH as a whole, where once I had the Selvala deck, I felt really powerful, and my friend had just built his first commander deck, which is a Memnar deck, and he was running Arkham Dagzin in the deck, and Paradox Engine was also legal at the time and in the deck. And I said, hey, if you really want to power that thing up, have you looked at Arkham Dagzin as a commander? And then he fell down the rabbit hole of cEDH too, and now my playgroup is Arkham doesn't work anymore, but now he has a Scepter powered Urza, and there's a Godo and a Divergent Kaikar and an Elsha top, then my deck. So
that sounds like a fun playgroup.
Yeah, we like to do, I don't know why, I think maybe we're all cheap, but we like to all play the really fast monocolor decks, like Crick and Godo and Selvala, and just you want to play like 3 games in 15 minutes? Sure.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that way everyone gets to do their thing at least once a night, right?
Yeah, I'm fine. If I win at least one of those games, I'm fine with it, because there's no like real shame in if you're mono green or whatever, losing to Crick like turn 2. You're like, okay, like you did it.
You did the thing. Yeah,
you did the thing.
So, how did you get involved with the command zone? Everyone, I think, saw the debate, I think is what they called it. It wasn't really a debate, but it was like so can you tell us about that process and what it was like to meet them?
Yeah, sure. Obviously Jimmy and Josh are kind of like the big boys in content creation, and me just being a commander, I guess, aficionado, I suppose. I had been listening to their podcast for some time, and using my powers of influence, I tweeted at them. I was like, hey, I want to be on the show. And so they're like, hey, that sounds cool, science guy stuff. And so it was pretty simple, and a lot of collaborations usually happen this way, where you're kind of mutual fans of each other, and then you just make something happen real quick, which is the fun part about being in LA and knowing a little bit about video production. But so they invited me to play on the game nights for the Commander 18 pre-cons, and showed up super professional, made friends, and ever since then, I'm a part of their play group. We play every once in a while, and I had them on an episode of my show. And they're just really nice guys, and they love Magic as much as I do. So kind of how I settled on doing something about competitive Commander was, I had done pretty much every piece of their content except the podcast, and I knew I wanted to do the podcast. And this was around the same time where I was launching my new channel, Kyle Hill, and I felt like, whoa, this would be a good time to get out there and talk to people. So they asked me, was there anything I wanted to talk about? And it was also the same time I started getting more into competitive play, and they kind of consider me in their play group to, lean much more towards that than anyone else in the play group. And, they call me out for it publicly, but I don't care. And now people show up, if I play people online or at the last Command Fest or something like that, people will show up and be like, oh, I heard you had strong decks. I'm like, all right, okay, you want to go? Okay, here we go. But I kind of like rising. I kind of like rising to that. It's like, I'm not gonna depower just because people are like, oh, I heard you like to beat people with infinite combos. You're like, yeah, goddamn right I do. You want to do this?
Josh Lee in class said you're the guy who's I got a kick.
And then I'm cracking my knuckles, I'm adjusting the bandage on my forehead. It's like, nothing personal, kid. And then blood sprays out from his neck, and I clean my samurai sword off. Getting back to the point though, so I knew I wanted to do something. I was getting into competitive, and so I suggested a little outline. And remember, I said that I was a total noob, and I still am in this side of the format. So I wanted to make sure I was representing the community and what they talk about and what they care about accurately. And so I reached out with my outline through one of the Discords to Shaper Savant, as I'm sure all of your listeners know who that is. And I had them go through my outline to see, are my points, do they make sense? Do they accurately represent the community? They gave me some feedback, and then I went on the show. And as far as I can tell, I know their audience isn't really a competitive audience, but from the reaction that I got just from other people in the competitive side of the community, it seemed like it turned out really well, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, we were, I know as soon as I saw the episode posted, I was definitely nervous, but it was really, it came off very well, and they could tell that you took the time to check your sources, which was greatly appreciated. And having someone represent the community positively.
Yeah, and you know, maybe it comes from like my sciencey kind of background, but the last thing I ever want to do in any form is to, you know, misrepresent some accurate information. You know, it's like, oh, that's not what this means. This isn't what we do, or whatever. So that would have been really detrimental, especially when it's so easy in the wider EDH community to malign competitiveness. I wouldn't want to be part of that problem, because as Jimmy and Josh made very clear a number of times, they don't like playing competitive, but they find no reason. Like they think it's totally valid, and as do I. Like I play, you know, 80% of my playtime isn't competitive. Like it's not the majority of what I play. I just like having two modes, which is, you know, this is kind of my casual brewing, what cards do I got kind of side. And, you know, I like to play a bunch of different kinds of decks. That's why I have so many. I want to see like, oh, are my decision-making skills good? Did I, you know, is this version of Rakdos that I don't see very much, you know, am I going to be really smart with this? Are people going to see Ancestral Statue and Impact Tremors coming after I do 3 damage to them with a Lightning Bolt? No, they will not. Yeah, that's a good one. Or Tree of Perdition and Walking Ballista? Oh, you poor bastard. But, you know, it's all equally valid. So I wanted to the best of my ability, kind of show their audience another valid side, and maybe just kind of get that in their heads where it's not pub stomping, it's not. But I wanted to emphasize the factors that make it fun to play. You know, the interactivity and the brewing and the community and the speed of the games and stuff like that. So I'm happy about it.
It came at such a great time too, because it was directly, you know, the most influence that cEDH had in the public eye. There is a marked change of how it was even at the beginning of this year and how it is now talked publicly. Like the Command Zone never used to mention cEDH, but they I heard them say the word cEDH like 8 times in the last set review I watched.
Yeah.
Like it is a word people use now, and they use it in a non-derogatory way. They use it in a way that's like, if this is your jam, do it. Yeah, the timing of the Flash conversation obviously was like a very well-timed discussion.
Yeah.
So not only was this whole thing going on where like people were saying like, hey, these are just people playing this game and we can at least put their house out, as Sheldon mentioned, and then also having you on talking about this, you know, hey, this is what we do. We're all like-minded people. This is what we want.
Yeah.
We are enjoying this thing that we are all agreeing to do together, you know?
It was interesting that that was all happening because of a single card being printed, and it caused it's such an outsized reaction from this minority community that people suddenly saw the community, right? Where they're like, why? Like, who are all these people talking about this card? Like, why is this card so broken? Why are they so mad about it or concerned about it? You know, obviously, in my estimation, it was the single most important card to be printed for cEDH in maybe ever, just from how much it warped the format all at once.
It warped the perception of the format. It warped the actual gameplay of the format.
Yeah, every deck that could run it would make changes, or even if they could possibly run it, it homogenized decks. Where I personally I don't like that. Where if you play blue and black, you know what win con you're going for, and that's less interesting to me. And obviously, these are the concerns that a lot of people had. And so it was weird that cEDH became more. Maybe it's unfortunate because you know, it became more of a talking point or more known to people because we were complaining about something. But
I think that's how a lot of things work, though.
Yeah. You know, we said this in the previous iteration of this, but, you know, just going down to even how these things are implemented, you know, having the rules committee for EDH separate from Wizards is just weird. Like, it's always going to be weird. Having it being a separate, non-paid, non-employee-based entity with what has to be limited access to WotC and their design team. I'm sure they talk to each other, but not as though they were employees or in the same damn building, you know? Sure. So it's always going to be somewhat misaligned with what Magic or WotC wants to do. I mean, look at Companion. I mean, that was a disaster. I mean, it really was. Yeah. I mean, they were trying to make something more like Commander, and they really fucked up a couple of formats for a while. And then they had to errata brand new cards. Like, this wasn't going back and changing the wording on like Static Orb or whatever the hell, you know, like this was the set is like just out, and they're like, oh,
Yeah, the new set hadn't even been
yeah,
released
and
yet.
all
Yeah.
of these cards read differently. And then imagine taking that out to the wider community, or someone just, some 13-year-old just buying their first booster pack or whatever. It's just like, oh, just so, who's going to tell them, like, oh, just so you know, the card doesn't read that way. They're never going to know that. They don't watch the content. I just think these fracturings in our community, I especially as Magic gets more and more successful. I mean, it's always been successful, but it's even more successful than it has been now. I think we need to be really vigilant about how we're presenting ourselves and what we perceive as problems. I don't know. That's my take on that.
Yeah, I think you're right that like the fact the rules committee is separate is weird. It is weird. I think there's like benefits and downsides depending on how you look at certain problems. So like if you get hybrid mana, that's a pretty like controversial topic.
Yeah.
If you think that hybrid mana should work in so that you could play like Kitchen Finks, which is a hybrid green-white card, in your mono white decks, well, the reason it doesn't work that way is because the rules committee is outside of WotC.
Just, again, big picture, having the rules for the most popular way to play the biggest trading card game on the planet, having rules that are different than what WotC can say they are, is weird, right?
I agree.
I mean, like,
it is weird.
Like they can make, we're forgetting here, I mean, they are spending tens of millions of dollars developing commander-specific products and sending them out all across the world, and then a couple of guys can post a few sentences on a website that looks like you got it off an AOL disk in 2002, and then the entire rules for millions of people in the world change. That is bizarre. That's really bizarre.
So, any hot takes on the format apart from the one about the rules committee?
Well, I do have a hot take, and this will be, I mean, we talked about this before, but maybe not for your listeners, and maybe I can sharpen this up a little bit. But you know, you guys are now in the content creation game. I know you're pretty recent, but obviously you consume a lot of content, and your viewers are likely to also consume a lot of content, whether that be podcasts or videos or streams or what have you. And I have a little bit of experience in content creation at this point, and from an outside non-Magic perspective, my hot take is that the Magic content creation community has to be really careful about where their formats are going. And I say that in that I used this little test last time, but now if I told you I was watching a EDH gameplay video where a guy sounded like this, and then he shipped the turn to Ryan. That was happening. You saw the cards overlaid in the center of the screen, highlighted, and then receding into the screen. It was filmed over webcam with borders around each of the play areas, and it was narrated in a very slow pace. And at the beginning, they said, "Hey gang," or something akin to that. "Welcome back to the channel. Here's our list of Patreons. Here's our discount links. Here's everyone's opening hands. And with that, let's go to the gameplay. Oh, and then at the end, let's have a review of how the games went." Now, you're not necessarily sure who I'm talking about, and that's the problem. I do watch a lot of Magic the Gathering gameplay videos, but to me, it doesn't matter who I'm watching. And if you're making Magic the Gathering content out there, I would say that you need to make sure that if you want to stand out, like I've been on YouTube for a while, you know, I made a channel that was 1.3 million subscribers. I just started my own. We're at 200 again in, you know, just a month or two. And to really stand out and to have actual growth, if you ever wanted to do this as a job, you are going to need to stand out from the crowd, and you're going to need to think of ways that aren't just easy to do. It's easy to just get a webcam and then to narrate with voiceover. That's easy, and I get why people do that, and it works out fine. But I'm waiting to see what's the game nights of cEDH or something like that. Now, I say that full well knowing that what Game Nights does is a 5-figure production. So most people won't have that support. Most people aren't sponsored by Wizards. I understand that, but people can get more creative, and I'm challenging your listeners or the cEDH content creation community. I'm challenging you to get more creative with the formats. I want to watch your content. Right now, it doesn't matter who I'm watching. It's more or less all the same, and it all sounds the same, and it all looks the same. What's going to be the next thing? That's what I want. And if you think it can be you, take a chance. I mean, there's not. It's not going to be the end of the world if you try something new for an episode and it doesn't work out. You can go back to doing whatever you're doing. But come on, give me some flashiness. Give me some. I don't know. I can do impressions of some of these guys' voices at this point, and it's just I don't know. Like it's nothing against any of these people. It's just I need something that captures the intensity of what I'm watching, right? Where you're playing, $10,000 decks and multi-$1,000 cards sometimes, and you're playing fast, and I'm sure people are talking to each other as this is going on, but you lose that emotion and that investment when you kind of strip away that all because you're trying to do it as cheaply as possible. Again, I don't fault you for doing that. I'm just saying, if you want to grow and as the whole thing evolves, it's something you need to keep in mind, because just doing what you're doing forever, why would you expect growth from that?
I have to say, one of the things that I was most excited being able to participate in was when I did commentary on the top 4 of the Marchesa tournament. And it was exciting, and it was got to, a lot of the stuff that I said there was my genuine live reaction to things happening in the game. And it was like, what in the hell is happening on this stack right now?
Most of the gameplay videos right now are narration-based. Why doesn't anyone sound like that? Why doesn't anyone sound like they're actually interested or animated or excited? Like it's all very by the book, and even when you're playing these games face to face with people, it's not like I play a mana crypt, I pass the turn, and you know who I'm imitating right now, and like that's that's the issue. Like I want to get me excited. Why am I watching? Why am I watching you and not someone else?
It's pretty crazy because like these are kind of like, I feel like these are kind of like they're not like complicated things that you're saying, but there is like definitely just an amount of insight you have on like just like it's like a lot of things. Like a lot of the concepts in cEDH are not that complicated. That you just have to have, sometimes you just have to have someone else say it out loud.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, you're right.
Yeah.
And a lot of things you're saying now are like that, where it's like, I just need someone to put the idea in my head, and then I'm able to attack these problems at a different angle now.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Like,
I mean,
now that I know there's like depth to the problem.
Yeah,
now that
happened with, and like I'm only able to do that because I've been doing this for a while, and I kind of I work in the media industry, and I have an idea that my mind goes to those places. Like who is the audience? How am I talking to them? What's the narrative interest? How am I presenting myself? How do I look?
Yeah.
How should I sound? What will my niche be? What questions should I be asking? I think about that on top of the actual content that I'm making, and that's only because I have experience with it. But the same thing happened to me, to take myself down a peg with cEDH in general, which was, learning a different way of thinking about playing Magic, which is, like, oh, your life total is a resource, and, board wipes aren't really a thing anymore. And, like all these like little shifts in playing competitively, I was like, oh, fuck, yeah, I never thought about that. Like, yeah, we mentioned this before, but it was like, I didn't know why Tymna was good. And then when I saw it in action and saw someone really working it, especially with Thrasios, I was like, oh, So that's all I'm trying.
Yeah, this happens every turn.
So I guess that's all I'm trying to get at. From the more video production side, I can see where maybe people are too focused on just doing the actual gameplay than they are on some of the jazz, some of the SEO and the pizzazz, as it were.
The story, and I don't know if I've told this on the cast yet, but I was playing in my local store with Shaper, and he let me borrow his food chain deck, and it was the first time I played it. I wanted to get to know it, and he was just walking me through some of the basics of it. And there was one point where I played a land tapped and passed, and he goes just so you know, like, I don't know if I'd do that. And I was like, well, I'm not doing anything. I had a really bad hand. And he's like, yeah, but like now I know you're not a mana drain, and I'm not going to play around it. And he was playing like Crom or something, right? Which is like a hell of a juicy target for mana drain, right? So like if you're in that seat, you're like, oh, I wouldn't play this card into a mana drain. And that was just the thought that never crossed in my head. And I was like,
yeah,
oh, he just knew that by me playing a tap land, he now like put me off mana drain for the rest of like basically X amount of turns until it's realistic that I would just draw it again.
Yeah.
Like, but he said it so it wasn't a thing to him. You know what I mean? It was just a second-hand thought.
I didn't feel like a good Magic player until I was able to bluff people by holding up mana that I had. I didn't need to use it for something. Nothing was going to happen, but I knew, like I had no interaction or anything, but I knew holding up a specific combination of mana might put an idea into someone's head enough that things would go my way. And that's when I really started feeling like, okay, I'm getting it. Like I'm understanding how how to play 4-dimensional chess, so to speak.
A really common one is someone like playing 5 color, and they tap their volcanic island. They'll have like, mana in such a way that they can choose to tap their volcanic island or not tap it.
Yeah.
And they end up tapping it and leaving up like a tropical island instead. And you're like, oh, okay, this person is not on Pyroblast, or at least doesn't have Pyroblast in their hand. Like that's a super common tell, and I'll bring that up a lot of times when I'm playing against people who like I don't think are aware of that yet, don't think of the game in that way quite yet, and it's always interesting to see the way they react. They went, oh, why would you think that? And I'll be like, oh, because you just tapped this mana source, so this one.
Yeah, it's a fun feeling too when someone does something in a certain way, and just as like a flex, you're like, oh, that's because you have this card in your hand. You're just exactly right, and they're like, no, shut up. but like just from the sequence of events, you're like, I'm 100% positive this is the card in your hand that you just have.
So it was actually kind of crazy. I had that happen the other day because as part of the Super League I was talking about, we get to work as a team. So I have a chat with my team. And I can hear the game while they're playing, and I can like text my teammates. So there was this just a weird turn one from somebody where I noticed they played a Chrome Mox and used that to play an Arbor Elf as opposed to their land drop for a turn. And I was like, oh, they must have a Mystical Tutor in hand. And I sent that to my teammate. And I was like, just be aware that I'm pretty sure that they're holding up mana purposefully. The way they tapped was very strange. They're holding up mana peculiarly. Also, I'm pretty sure it's a Mystical Tutor, if I had to bet. The next turn, it was Sick Robot. He Mystical Tutored to get a Dark Writ and won the game off of it. And I was like, I mean, I'm not saying I told you so, but...
That's nuts.
I've had games where I'm like, the person is about to untap, and I'm like, all right, let's all get ready. Dark Ritual ad nauseum. And then they just do Dark Ritual ad nauseum. And you're like, all right, time to scoop it up.
It's even more so in like one win con decks, like Divergent Kaikar. You're like, okay, I wonder why that 4 mana is up. I have no idea.
Oh, you have 11 mana. Wonder what you're playing, Godo deck.
Well, at least
that one's a little more telegraphed.
Yeah, at least Godo's like, yeah, like, oh, I wonder what he's gonna do. Well, sometimes they'll play a Hammer and a Zon. You're like, ooh, spicy. Never underestimate Godo, man.
I love that.
Oh,
deck.
I love it. Don't get me wrong, it's one of my favorite decks.
So straightforward.
Curse Totem or Null Rod.
That was such a bad transition. We can't use that.
That was okay.
No, because Godo is like only good because it plays Curse Totem. Duh. Come on, right?
That's nothing.
I traded my friend a Curse Totem just so he could build it, actually.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
I told you, Ian.
So I remember this answer made one of you very mad, but I think just with the sheer reliance on fast mana for the health of a deck, I would probably go Null Rod, in that the decks that can take advantage of it can really take advantage of it more so than a deck that runs Well, I mean, maybe they're sometimes in the same deck, but what I'm getting at is Null Rod seems to affect more staples and more really important parts of a cEDH deck than Curse Totem, which will hit, some commanders and really turn off dorks. Well, not really they'll turn them off. But, with no mana crypts and no Dockside and, no Soul Ring and all that stuff, no Scepter. I don't know. I think Null Rod's pretty damn impactful, but I'm willing to be swayed. It's really meta dependent, I think.
I'm a big Null Rod stan.
Yeah, that's super fair. You also do play in a very artifact heavy meta from what you told us.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, especially if you're on Selvala, it's like Collector Oof is free. Just get them.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if you're on that.
But then again, a Curse Totem with Selvala out is
it's
like, well, I hope I draw Force of Vigor.
The thing we used to say was like Curse Totem was a better card in the decks that played it usually, but Null Rod is like played in a lot more of the better decks. Decks that can take advantage of Null Rod are still very powerful.
Yeah.
Where like not being able to play Thrasios or Kenrith or
it hurts. Or
even just like Mana Dorks. So
yeah, no, I think some of the best decks, the builds are divergent enough where I think there's a good case for either one, because a lot of the like
that's fair.
So for example, like there are the decks that don't have a lot of artifacts but have a lot of dorks, and there's a lot of those decks and they don't run mana rocks because they don't have to, like the Nagilas or for example, or the Selvalas where they run like 5 or less artifacts, and then there's the decks that really need the ramp, your Teferis or your Godos, or even Kaikar will run the talismans and arcane signets and stuff.
It runs a ton.
So I think it depends, 'cause either one could be a real blowout, and I think you just have to know kind of what you're playing, because it doesn't seem like the top tier decks do both equally. it really does seem like you're either dork heavy or you're artifact heavy. It's not really like an equal, like Najila will run like what the hell is it, like 10 mana dorks or whatever the is, but like less than less than 5 artifacts. And that Null Rod was a part of that list for a while.
Yeah.
What's the best turn 1 you've ever had?
Oh, I can tell you exactly what it was. And I was like showing off these guys at my LGS. I was like, hey, want to see this deck I've been building? And it was Doomtide, or it was like Zur. And I had enough mana to play a turn 1 Auriac Salvagers, and I had LED in hand, and I just went for it.
Jeez.
And oh my god, it was so good.
Yeah, I can't think of a specific one for me, but I remember like I was playing casually and some guy, I think turn one or turn 2 dust with a Maelstrom Wanderer food chain deck, and he was able to play like Treasonous Ogre like turn 1 or something like that. And he went down, and we were like, what the sh. Well, I mean that's why Flash is banned, right? Like you hear the legends of the pregame action win, like that's stupid.
Oh yeah, it literally happened in the pod next to me at Braden's event.
No other card can do that.
I remember there's a guy named Phil who plays a cEDH in New Jersey, and he goes to GP Jersey every year. And I remember it was the first time I was bringing my friends to a GP, and I said, if you sit down with a Godot player, be afraid. That deck is a cEDH deck. Because like this is 3 years ago maybe, so like the information had not, maybe 2 years ago. Now people weren't aware yet. Yeah. And someone comes back to me like, dude, I didn't even get to play my first turn. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I lost to Godot. They were on the play and they just won. And I was like, nice.
Yeah, like I told you.
Yeah. It's a good win for Godot. It's a win for Godot. I think the best turn 1 I ever saw was across the table from me. Like the one I actually like in game with me was when I was playing an after event. So the way our LGS works is that we have like an event portion of the night, which is a couple rounds, and then the winner gets prizes and stuff like that. But so this was just a game afterwards, and I was playing against Shaper, playing Opus Thief, and he turn 1's a Smothering Tithe into a turn 2
oh my
Time
god.
Twister.
Yeah,
we lost that game.
I've done a turn 2 Tithe into a turn 3 Twister, but not quite that good.
So Kyle, last thing we wanted to ask you. We know last year you attended GP Vegas and had a great time with everybody. And recently you were on the Spell Table event, right? The GP Online. So what's your Command Fest or GP plans?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed GP Vegas so much that I would definitely go to any Command Fests that were reasonably within my area. I had a lot of fun, met a lot of people. The intersection of science nerds and Magic the Gathering nerds is so high that we usually have something to talk about, or they've seen a video of mine or something like that, and it's very humbling, it's very fun. And I mean, I'm a Magic nerd first and foremost too, so playing games for 10 hours across 2 days, 10 hours each day for 2 or 3 days or whatever. It's a lot of fun. So there's a big open question about the pandemic and how gatherings are going to look going forward. And some of these, as a sciencey person, to be frank, a lot of the outlook for the way we did business is not good. A lot of things are probably going to have to change. But if we can do it safely, or even more Spell Table stuff, I had a lot of fun doing that. Maybe if they could figure out how to kind of stream those games as a part of the platform, where anyone with like the watch link could watch people play it or what have you. Yeah, I would love to do that. I mean, I had such a good time. Actually, I'm trying to get a Commander League going on my own Discord for my channel, so we'll see what happens.
Oh, very cool.
I'm definitely into it. Just patreon.com/Kyle Hill if you want to get involved, baby.
Patreon.com/cehcast if you don't want to get involved there and want to. Please don't include that. I'm such a trash person.
Wow.
I'm a dumpster fire of a human being.
See, now that wasn't a great CTA right there. That wasn't good. Do you want me, like, see, with all my media training, I can CTA anything. Do you want me to try what you were attempting to try?
No, I just want to forget it happened.
And of course, if you like Kyle's sciencey stuff, which I know you do, you probably already like cEDH, or maybe you want to get into it. And if that's the case, you can definitely join us at the cEDH Cast. You can go to patreon.com/cedhcast and you can join our community where if you do that right now, you can get behind the scenes looks at what we're doing. You can get advanced episode notifications. You can give us ideas for future episodes, perhaps who you want to have on. Again, if you want to go to cEDH Cast at Patreon, you can get involved with all the things that we're doing. Thanks for watching. Something like that.
All right, that just got edited to the. I'm just
so
going to add that to
clipping
the
that
end of
sound
every
bite.
video we've ever made. Thanks, Kyle.
Well, if you don't have those tiers, it's going to be awkward, but
We can make them. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Yeah.
Wow, that was fun. No, thank you so much, boys. I was happy that you reached out to me in one of the Discords, and it's been a pleasure now talking with you guys for over 3 hours about all the nerdy things cEDH. So yeah, thanks for having me, and I hope the rest of your week goes wonderfully.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on the cEDH Cast. We hope you have an amazing week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.